Welcome to our first module within the new Leisure Rules course. In this first module, we're going to be exploring the role of catalyzation and specifically the world of wellness as it pertains to how people want to spend their free time. I'm excited, so let's get started. And catalyzation is really this desire and this consumer drive to live in alignment with one's values and really become one's best self. Now, prior to 2019, this looked like self-optimization a lot of the time. But nowadays, it feels a little bit more like self-preservation. And I make that distinction because we're kind of doing a lot worse than we were doing pre-2019. There's been a 30% jump in reported symptoms of anxiety and depression. And even around the world, we're seeing dentists kind of anecdotally say that they're seeing an increase in tooth fractures because people are stress grinding their teeth so much. So how does the modern consumer cope with all of this change and all of this uncertainty? Well, self-care as a Google term and as a concept has been on the rise for a number of years. And fun fact, the last I checked, it hit an all-time peak in April 2020 for pretty obvious reasons. Now, prior to the pandemic, we were seeking out self-care in highly experiential ways. We were going to alcohol-free sober bars. We were going to nightclub-inspired boxing gyms. It was a ton of fun. But of course, a lot of these activities are no longer permissible while we need to socially distance from one another. Now, before we talk about the future of this category and of this space, I want to root a lot of what I talk about in the wellness backlash that I think is beginning to take fold. Now, what are we backlashing against when it comes to the world of wellness? Well, let's talk about some of the criticisms. One of the first and most prominent criticisms is that a lot of the wellness space and the wellness industry is really shame-driven. It kind of relies on people feeling at least a little bit bad about themselves in order to shell out the money that they are. One of the products that I think is doing a great job combating this and really redefining wellness is Nintendo's Ring Fit Adventure. This is a fitness game, and it's kind of like an updated version of the Wii, if you will. It's a role-playing game, so it's highly immersive. You're literally in this fantasy world combating all these mysterious dragons and monsters. It's highly customizable, and that's especially important given people's different physical abilities. And really the goal of the game is not to get you shredded and in the best shape of your life. It's really just about getting people active and having them enjoy that process. Now lastly, and this is a subtle distinction that I actually think is very important, the enemy in Ring Fit Adventure is not some embodiment of a lack of motivation or laziness. It's actually this enormous, incredibly fit purple dragon named Drago, who is basically a toxic fitness bro. He is completely consumed and obsessed with fitness in a way that you can see is really detrimental to him. Another criticism we see a lot in the wellness world is that so many products and things that are sold within this world are often not really backed up by good science. And as part of the backlash here, we're seeing a rise in insights like brainy beauty, where we see these cosmetic scientists in particular becoming kind of influencers in their own right and doing a lot of work on podcasts and on other platforms to really debunk a lot of the myths that are pushing products in this category. Another criticism we hear in the wellness space is that it is often overpriced and therefore really inaccessible to most people. Now, what's happened over the last year is really interesting as it pertains to this idea because, a lot of the things that made wellness so expensive were often experiences that took place in person. So I'm talking about things like wellness retreats or going to spin classes. But because so much of this moved online over the past year, it became much more affordable to more people than ever before. An example of this that I want to highlight is from the travel and cultural experiential agency called Comuna. So Comuna has been around for a number of years, and they do a really incredible job of running these really authentic and healing and really experiential trips to areas like Romania and Portugal and Oaxaca. And, of course, now they can't do a lot of those trips. They want to keep those areas safe. So what they ended up doing during the pandemic was pivoting to sort of virtual sessions that they would normally run in person. So, for example, they did a 4-week series where if you joined this series, you were connected directly to a Oaxacan healer who would teach you basically everything she knows in this really immersive and really interactive way as well. On the whole, I think the thing that we see happening in terms of how people think about wellness and taking care of themselves is this better distinction between what is self-maintenance and what is self-care. Self-maintenance is what a lot of people think self-care is, but is really too surface level to make a meaningful difference in how people feel. Self-maintenance includes things like doing a face mask or getting your nails done. It's, again, very surface level, whereas self-care, as it's defined by most mental health professionals, is really about something much more substantial and often less easy to make money on. It's things like are much less glamorous, like paying your taxes on time or cleaning your room or taking the time to meditate. Another criticism that we see in the wellness world, increasingly so, is that it can be incredibly exclusionary. And I say that because a lot of the people who make the most money in this space, a lot of the people who are most represented in this space, look a lot like Gwyneth Paltrow. It's kind of overwhelmingly white in a lot of ways. Now, luckily, thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been an increased focus on and support of women of color-owned businesses, and the lifestyle and wellness space is no exception to that. One of the brands and the companies that I want to highlight that has come up over the last couple of years is the Underbelly Yoga app. The Underbelly Yoga app was launched by Jessamine Stanley, who you can see in the photo there. She's an incredible yogi. She's been doing yoga and practicing yoga for it's like 10 years or something, possibly more. And what she found, and her reason for launching the Underbelly Yoga app, was when she would go to her local yoga studios, it was very rare that she would be surrounded by either classmates or even teachers who looked like her. So for her, the Underbelly Yoga app was a chance to make yoga and wellness by extension a lot more inclusive. When it comes to creating the future of Catalyzation, integrity is crucially important to the future of the wellness category, so keep that in mind. Secondly, make sure that you're providing consumers with flexible, accessible, and effective ways of improving themselves. And lastly, think really critically about who is and who is not visible or welcomed by your offering. So that wraps up our first module in New Leisure Rules on Catalyzation. Here are some workshop questions for you to consider. How can you support consumers in being their best selves while meeting a need for more affordable solutions as well? 2. What are some specific changes you would need to make to ensure that your offering is as absolutely inclusive as it can be?